No One Lives Forever is a 2000 first-person shooter developed by Monolith. It's a story-driven, spy-themed FPS set in the 60s, which follows the story of Cate Archer, a former cat burglar who now works for Unity, an international secret organization that watches over world peace. The game was praised at release for its stylish presentation, intriguing plot which cleverly subverted all the tropes and cliches of spy films and TV shows of the era, and its humor. Many contemporaneous reviews also felt it was the best FPS since Half-Life, but I wouldn't know about that because I've never played Half-Life, but I still felt it was worth a mention if it would convince some people to play this game. Anyway, No One Lives Forever was followed by a sequel which I'll absolutely cover in a future video, and a prequel set between the events of the two games called Contract Jack. Now, No One Lives Forever holds a special place in the gaming canon in that it was one of the first games to use adaptive music and really push the boundaries of cinematic storytelling in video games. It's also a member of a now semi-dormant, but realistically speaking dead genre called comedy games. I'm not talking about games with funny moments and plots, but games whose mechanics are built around comedic elements such as jazz punk and Giant Citizen Kabuto to a lesser degree. Too bad there's no way to purchase this game in 2021. Once again, the bloated, cadaverous Leviathan, also known as copyright law, swallowed whole yet another classic, preventing modern audiences from purchasing it legally. Basically, a bunch of companies purchased and merged with each other over the years, and with each transition, the rights to the IP were pushed further and further into copyright hell, until they were chained and devoured by copyright lawyers. Or something, I think that's how it works. Anyways, it's gotten to a point where none of the parties involved in this illegal clusterfuck know who actually owns the rights to this IP. Lead designer Craig Hubbard said in an interview that he thought Monolith owned the IP and Fox the title of the first game, but he was not sure. When Night Dive Studios attempted to work with Activision and Fox to dig through their archives and hopefully get to the bottom of this, they refused because the transitions predated computerized records. I think there are two ways to interpret the refusal. They either wanted to spare Night Dive Studios the ensuing frustration and psychological trauma of having to untangle this mess, or they hope to commission Netflix to produce a true crime style legal documentary miniseries based on this legal mess. I'd definitely watch it and scream in despair all throughout its duration. Now, here's the thing. I said that you can't buy it, but not that you can't play it. Thanks to the No One Lives Forever revival project, all you have to do is simply download the installer, apply a modernizer patch, and you're good to go. No CD crack, and it comes with widescreen resolution support. Alright, let's get this ball rolling.
I've missed you terribly. Every moment I'm away from you is pure torture. How I've longed to take you in my arms and whisper words of love into your ear. Now, where's that damn socket wrench? How'd this goat get in here?
The game kicks off with a chain of over-the-top assassinations whose gravitas are only strengthened by the assassin's signature move of leaving a red lily at the site of the murders. We are then taken to the residence of super spy Cate Archer, who sets up a meeting with her Unity supervisor and mentor, Agent Bruno Lori. There, she expresses frustration at the tedious and mundane nature of her tasks, as the old-fashioned top brass of Unity are reluctant to send women in the field. Remember, this is the 60s, we'll circle back to this a bit later in the video. As Cate is about to launch into another justified tirade about Unity's organizational politics holding back competent women from proving themselves in the field, she gets recalled to HQ. It's not a committee member needing a babysitter for the night, as she bitterly quips, but an actual briefing for an actual mission that will have Cate performing actual field work. But this is not a sudden shift in thinking, no. Apparently the men in the opening cinematic were just a few of the dozens of field agents killed as part of an effort to nullify Unity's network of spies. So, because of a huge shortage of manpower, Unity has no choice but to have Cate, a woman, find out who's been eating their boys. Actually, Cate suspects right from the get-go that H.A.R.M, the aptly named legendary evil organization, is definitely behind the attacks, but nobody is willing to believe her because you know. And that's basically the premise of the game. A frustrated, overqualified female spy in a world dominated by men is sent to solve the biggest crisis her employer has ever faced because there's no one else around to do it, so it may as well be her. It's a great setup to a story that gets progressively more convoluted as Cate uncovers the layers upon layers of betrayal, incompetency, and intrigue that surround this plot. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about any plot elements in this video. All I'll say is this: if you like high-stakes spy thrillers with lots of twists and turns, you'll have a blast playing this game. Now let's talk a bit about the setting itself. No One Lives Forever takes place in a world where super spies have unlimited licenses to kill and evil organizations with world-conquering ambitions are part of daily life. Stylistically speaking, No One Lives Forever goes for a grounded, tongue-in-cheek interpretation of the 60s. So think Jackie Onassis type hairstyles, Art Deco revival interior design, men in trench coats, smoke-filled cafes, and all that stuff people were suddenly super passionate about back when Mad Men became popular. Good show, by the way, you should watch it. No One Lives Forever oozes style, and I don't think there are other games besides the sequel that look and feel like it.
You can't expect the solution to react without a catalyst.
There is a catalyst. That's not the problem.
Are you sure your proportions are correct?
Positive. I measured everything twice.
You included all the ingredients?
Yes, yes!
Even the sodium nitrate?
Oh, damn, I forgot about that.
Now, while there are a lot of world building and setting elements that I could go over, for the sake of keeping this video short, I will focus on just a handful. One of them is how No One Lives Forever approaches the concept of an evil organization. Let's talk about H.A.R.M. What distinguishes them from your standard evil organization is that it functions and is presented as an actual organization. What do I mean by that? Well, they have a human resources department, interior guidelines, overtime policies, they even hold fucking team building events. H.A.R.M is a full-blown organization with a history, quote-unquote core values that outline their vision, and a mission which is, of course, to, you know, do illegal stuff. At the same time, H.A.R.M is a comically incompetent organization that, were it not for its dominant position in the market and the very nature of their services, which will always be in high demand, they would not have made it past the 1-year mark. H.A.R.M is plagued by the same dysfunctions present in your typical Fortune 500 corporations. Convoluted and cryptic internal processes, power-tripping upper management, office politics, and so on. It's only fitting then that its employees have unionized. The effort the writers put into fleshing out H.A.R.M as an organization is honestly insane. The game even alludes to other evil organizations with equally humorous names and acronyms. At the beginning of the game you can overhear a conversation between two goons about Misery, H.A.R.M's direct competitor. One of them used to work for Misery during the so-called giant laser incident. The plan was to vaporize the Empire State Building, but because Misery hired some non-union technicians to install the cooling systems, they almost blew up their base. As a side note, I love how H.A.R.M had their counterintelligence research group fuck with Misery's water supply prior to their corporate basketball match. The fact that an organization of H.A.R.M's size would waste precious resources and manpower on a fucking corporate sports event is so absurd and fitting at the same time. There's another organization called Sanctimonious Evil who is allegedly undergoing recruitment efforts for a plan involving the Eiffel Tower and 6,000 rolls of toilet paper. In one mission you can discover a letter of confirmation addressed to H.A.R.M employee Mr. Caulfield, who was to join Sanctimonious Evil as the new chief security officer. You know, for some evil organizations, they're surprisingly open to the concept of employee mobility. Like, you'd think they'd do everything in their power to prevent their goons from switching jobs, but no, apparently it's an open market. In this universe, career criminals are spoiled for choice. Need a little flexibility, want to be your own boss, set your own schedule, well, there's always freelance terrorism work. I mean, yeah, why work for Anger League as a demolitions expert when you can contract your skills to multiple companies? Now, you might have noticed that No One Lives Forever doesn't take itself too seriously. It might be tempting to call it a parody of the spy genre, but I wouldn't be so quick to label it as such. According to Hubbard, the game's intention was to, quote, make players laugh, but not at the expense of providing a broader, more satisfying emotional experience, end quote. Basically, the writers made sure that players could still have fun even if they didn't necessarily resonate with the humor. And since humor plays such a big role in No One Lives Forever, balancing comedy with providing an emotional, nail-biting spy thriller must have been extremely difficult. Especially since the game doesn't shy away from providing the occasional dash of bathroom humor. One example is the sexual innuendo-laden code phrases that Cate and her fellow agents have to use and the frustration they express at the clearly insecure person that wrote them.
Guten Abend, Fräulein. Do you make love to strangers?
Certainly not.
Then allow me to introduce myself.
Why not just introduce yourself to a police officer and spare me the trouble?
Who makes up these ghastly code phrases anyway?
Someone in the cryptography department. Someone in need of a girlfriend, apparently. Hello.
Are you free tonight, or will it cost me?
More than you can afford.
Why must I be made to say such idiotic things?
Want to come in for a game of Twister?
I'd rather run over you with my car.
These code phrases have a somewhat confessional tone to them, don't you think?
You are the most beautiful girl I have ever seen. Can you cook and clean too?
No, but I can put you in the hospital if you want. Maybe you can find someone to take care of you there. Maybe.
What sort of imbecile says things like this?
I'm afraid to find out.
By the way, I am supposed to tell you this. Behind the shelf.
Thanks.
Please don't think that I enjoyed saying those things to you. Even though the words were not mine, I am so disgusted with myself that I must return home and wash myself with soap.
Don't worry about it.
You are a kind young woman. I wish you luck.
Camp is also a big part of the humor. There's Inge Wagner, the opera singer / H.A.R.M agent, who is totally oblivious to her lack of talent. She thinks she's the best opera singer the world has ever seen, when in fact everybody is absolutely terrorized by her singing. During a cutscene, an underling of hers who failed at his job pulled one of the most spectacular 6D chess pro gamer moves I'd ever witnessed, and tried to trick Inge into prohibiting him from attending her motivational concerts for 2 weeks to avoid other forms of punishment, such as electrocution. The absolute madman almost pulled it off. Until Inge changed her mind and sent him to be electrocuted anyway, because according to her, depriving him from the honor of hearing her sing would be too cruel and inhumane a punishment. Also worth mentioning is her antagonistic relationship with the Scottish strongman Magnus Armstrong, but I'll leave that for you to see. Now, believe it or not, the funniest bits of writing are provided not by the cutscenes, but the enemy conversations you overhear during missions. Oh man, there's so much ground to cover here. So many good ones. So I'm gonna play a few bits that I feel are worth showcasing, and then I'm gonna deep dive into a couple of examples.
When do you go back on shift?
5 minutes ago.
Me too.
Did she really say that to you?
Yeah, can you believe it?
So what did you do?
What do you think I did?
I know what I would have done.
And you have your answer.
So, how was she?
What do you mean?
You know what I mean.
No, I don't.
I thought you said you know.
What? I didn't say that.
What did you say?
Why do you even have to ask?
I didn't think I had to ask, but I guess I was wrong.
You should get your mind out of the gutter. Mr. Volkov said the girl will be here soon.
How will we recognize her?
You didn't see the photograph on the bulletin board?
What photograph?
Mon Dieu!
I'm sorry, nobody told me.
Mr. Volkov was very specific at the meeting this morning. He said, be sure to study the photograph on the bulletin board. If you fail to recognize her, I'll assume something is wrong with your eyes and remove them for you.
I missed the meeting. I had to drop my daughter at school. I don't want him to scoop out my eyes.
I have no sympathy for you. You knew this was an important mission. You should have made other arrangements for your daughter.
Can you describe the girl for me? What color is her hair?
Why should I tell you? It would serve you right to have your eyes gouged out with a rusty spoon. You need to learn to prioritize.
Please, I beg you. Is she young or old? How does she dress?
She's 50 years old and wears a suit of armor.
I don't believe you.
She just turned 14 and she runs around in a bath towel.
Curse you! May all your sons marry camels!
If you must curse someone, curse yourself. There are a lot of people who would kill to have this job. You should take your work more seriously.
Please, just tell me what color her eyes are. Blue? I'd kill every woman with blue eyes that I see. Brown? Green?
I have to get back to my post. See you later. If you have eyes.
Ah!
What impressed me about these conversations is the degree to which they humanize these goons that you shoot by the hundreds through the course of the game. They complain about their jobs, bicker between each other, talk about their wives, pets, mothers, music, movies. They gossip about incompetent coworkers. It's good stuff. I overheard the conversation between two H.A.R.M goons where one of them was like, "Hey, I heard you play drums." And the other guy was like, "Yeah, you know, I fuck around with drums occasionally, but not so much these days because I work long hours." And then the first guy went, "You know, me and a couple of guys from security have been playing in this small club downtown. Nothing serious, just jamming, and we really need a drummer. Wanna join us?" To which the other replied, "Yeah, sure dude, sounds like fun, looking forward to it." I've heard this exact conversation so many times in real life, so you can probably imagine how surreal it must have felt for me to hear it from the mouths of some nameless goons. Now, the next conversation I'm going to talk about really encapsulates the genius of this game's writing. So it starts out pretty innocently, with Cate infiltrating a warehouse that supplies H.A.R.M staff with beer, according to one goon, to which the other replies that it seems like a whole lot of beer. Then the conversation takes an unexpected turn. One of the goons cites a H.A.R.M study which proved that criminals drink 3 times as much alcohol than law-abiding citizens. When asked if beer turns people into criminals, he states that correlation does not imply causality, and that it's possible that criminals are more likely to abuse alcohol to soothe their conscience. He continues by revealing his passion for criminal sociology and noting that even though we're products of our environments, we are ultimately responsible for our actions. As religions and laws teach us what is right and wrong, and how frequently the right choice is the more difficult path to take as it requires sacrifice and self-discipline. He finally cites himself as an example, a product of a broken home, whose lack of self-confidence as a child eventually evolved into anger issues and feelings of inadequacy, which led him to pursue a life of crime. In a final, shocking example of self-awareness, he says that even though he has identified the root causes of his criminal behavior, he is still childish to confront them and become a responsible citizen. And then I kill them both. This conversation goes on for 4 fucking minutes and I loved every second of it. You wouldn't expect a silly spy-themed FPS to offer a crash course in sociology and the systemic problems that push vulnerable people into leading criminal lives, but here we are. Moments like this one elevate No One Lives Forever from a simple first-person shooter to something truly unique. If you decide to play this game, I urge you to listen to all the enemy conversations. It's absolutely crazy how much effort Monolith has put into a piece of optional content that many players will most likely skip over. Another aspect that Monolith nailed are the characters. Now, there are so many I could talk about, like the obnoxious Unity director Mr. Smith and the overly masculine Unity agent Tom Goodman, so I'm going to focus on just 2. Let's start with Baron Dumas. The game initially leads you to believe that Baron Dumas is this mysterious, intelligent and powerful tycoon pulling the strings from the shadows. Oh, and that he's an accomplished explorer and hunter. When you meet him, you realize that he was just a front. But even then, the game pulls one of its most clever tricks by obscuring the true extent of his phoniness. So, if you pursue the dialogue tree related to his hunting experience, you find out that, surprise surprise, all his exploits are a big fat lie, as the dude lacks even the most basic knowledge about hunting rifles and even the natural habitat of the dangerous animals he'd supposedly hunted. Seems pretty straightforward. Dude's a phony. However, the second dialogue tree, which covers his alleged high culture and business acumen, reveals that Baron Dumas is not only a liar, but an absolute imbecile. Oh man, where do I even start? So, if you inquire about his legendary art collection, he mentions the fictional Fipstein as his favorite painter, whose painting he'd show to Cate if it weren't out being cleaned. He names Pablo Picasso as his favorite musician, and Beowulf as the historical figure he most admires. By the way, this conversation is part of a fake interview. To get into Baron Dumas' estate, Cate posed as a journalist who wanted to profile Baron Dumas for a story in Men of Influence, a fake magazine that covers the lives of inspiring individuals. Now, here's the funny part. I have a sneaking suspicion that the butler knew this was all bullshit, but let Cate inside anyway because he wanted to see the dim-witted Baron get humiliated, as proven by his insistence that he be present during the interview in case somebody needed his assistance. Okay, now let's talk about Cate herself.
They sent a woman to liberate me? Mein Gott im Himmel.
You can lodge a formal complaint the minute we set foot on Western soil. In the meantime, can we go?
This was not part of the arrangement.
She is here!
Excuse me for a moment, Doctor. As I was saying, perhaps we should go.
I believe that Cate is one of the best written characters in video game history. I mentioned earlier in the video that Cate is constantly being discriminated against because of her gender. One small example in this sense is her superiors questioning her abilities as a spy and blaming Cate for things out of her control that male agents would never be held accountable for. Now let me be clear, while the game makes it very obvious that the joke is on the pigs that discriminate against Cate, I realize that the sexism Cate experiences might be hard to stomach for some people, and the misogynism Cate experiences is not just verbal. If you look on the desk right after the first mission briefing, you'll notice 3 glasses of whiskey, and there's 4 of you in that meeting, 3 men and 1 woman. I might be reaching here, but I find it hard to believe it was not intentional. But, and here comes the cool part, Cate challenges the prejudices against her constantly with a mix of sharp wit and, well, demonstrating that she's more competent as a spy than all the male agents put together. Cate doesn't take shit from anyone. And the best part is that you can actively push back against these sexist assholes through the game's bare bones but functional dialogue system. I gotta say, watching Cate mock Agent Smith's desk job, the most vocal critic of her abilities who himself was pulled out of field work and relegated to a position of glorified pen pusher due to his incompetence as a spy, is really satisfying. Or how about when Cate mocks Agent Goodman's kitschy shirt during a cutscene and then you see him wearing a different shirt in the next mission? Cate is great, the writers did an excellent job with her, and her character gets only better in the sequel. Alright, so that concludes the non-gameplay section of this video, so let's move on to the shooty part.
Please be full of hay! Please be full of hay!
The cool thing about No One Lives Forever is that it's not a spy game in name only. This theme carries over into the gameplay as well. The intent of the designers was to make the player feel like a super spy, and I'm happy to report that they absolutely nailed it. At its core, the game has a linear, story-driven mission-to-mission structure that has Cate travel to a number of both exotic and not so exotic locales, such as Morocco, the Caribbean, East and West Germany and the Alps, to name just a few. But while missions are linear and feature a fixed set of objectives, the game does give players a decent amount of freedom in how they accomplish them. No One Lives Forever is a mixture of a first-person shooter and a stealth game. Players can traverse levels quietly, picking locks and eliminating enemies silently, or go in guns blazing. Now, to get one thing out of the way, the shooting is good, but it's nothing special. The game offers a decent variety of weapons, like submachine guns, sniper rifles and handguns, and different types of ammunition, like dum-dum rounds and acid bullets, as well as attachments like scopes and silencers. If you're not one for eliminating enemies the old-fashioned way, you can go for the game's more unorthodox weapons like the crossbow and the spear gun, though these are more suited for stealth. A core element of the gameplay are the numerous spy gadgets that Cate has at her disposal. Most of them are disguised in women's fashion items, such as the explosive lipstick, a body remover that I think is supposed to be a lip gloss, a beretta that can be used as a lockpick, mine and laser detection sunglasses, and a belt buckle that doubles as a zipline. Other notable examples include a lighter equipped with a welder which can destroy locks, a dog distracting mechanical poodle, a code breaker, a camera disabling device, and a few others. In between missions, you can choose what weapons and gadgets to carry into your next assignment. A nice quality of life feature is not allowing players to deselect gadgets that are necessary for progression. This limits player choice to a degree since you get only 4 gadget slots and critical gadgets occupy 3 of them in some missions, but it's not a big deal. Owing to the spy theme of the game, you'd think that stealth would be the ideal approach. For the most part, that's accurate. Enemies sport a pretty advanced and reactive AI for the time. They'll react to noises, the death sounds of their bodies, footsteps in the snow, and many other things. They also hit like a truck, and since Cate has a fixed health meter which regenerates only between missions, and has to rely on armor pickups to keep it protected, the less openly aggressive you are, the better. However, most of the stealth mechanics are half-baked at best and redundant at worst. In the basic tutorial, the game presents a thief-like stealth mechanic wherein the amount of noise you make is dependent on the surface you're walking on. So basically, metal makes the most noise, followed by wood and carpets. As far as I remember, there are only maybe a couple of missions that have some carpets, and a decent chunk of the levels take place in secret facilities with metal surfaces, so this mechanic is wasted in my opinion. Also, there's no leaning button, so if you want to check if there are any enemies around, you have to quickly pop out of cover and go back, obviously risking detection. Adding insult to injury, although the game encourages players to play stealthy right from the beginning, I don't think it's even possible to beat the first mission stealthily, as Cate gains access to the required gadgets in later levels. Well, at least the first time around, as players can revisit missions with newly acquired gadgets. Now, being an early 2000s game, you can be sure No One Lives Forever has a few failure upon detection obligatory stealth missions. The worst offender in this sense is the one that has you infiltrate Baron Dumas's office. This is by far the most restrictive mission in the game, as it's entirely trial and error based, and there's a fixed predetermined way to accomplish the objectives. It can easily take you an hour to complete without a walkthrough, as it requires doing things in a certain sequence. But in the mission's defense, the designers left tons of hints around that could have made my life easier had I paid attention to them. Now, even with all these flaws, stealth is pretty fun in missions whose level design fully supports it. Plus, stealth is the only way to hear enemy conversations, so you're missing out on a lot of content by going in guns blazing. Speaking of cool things, if there's one thing No One Lives Forever oozes from all of its pores, that would be the cool factor. Man, this game knows how to keep you entertained, and all that is possible thanks to Monolith's almost uncanny sense for good pacing. No mission is like the other. In one mission you are infiltrating an East German military complex, and in the next you're jumping out of a hijacked plane, shooting at enemies in midair, all while trying to catch up with a goon and steal his parachute. Just when you get bored of shooting Stasi agents, the game has you scuba diving through the remnants of a sunken ship, shooting harpoons at bloodthirsty sharks and H.A.R.M operatives. You start out in a quaint German town with the simple task of tailing a target. Before you know it, you find yourself infiltrating a chateau and then trudging through the frozen wilderness of the Alps, on the brink of hypothermia, desperately looking for shelter. You find a cabin, warm yourself up, hop onto a snowmobile and make your way to a secret H.A.R.M complex. Oh, also at one point you have to escape a H.A.R.M space station. Yes, you also go to space, as it's being bombarded by meteorites, because somebody forgot to plug in the meteorite detection system. And it has a bar. It's not mission relevant, but I felt it needed mentioning. Because I like bars. So yeah, this game is fucking cool. The reason why I'm so positive all of a sudden, despite having complained so much about the gameplay, is that I know for a fact that most of these issues mentioned earlier have been addressed in the sequel. Though that game introduced some issues of its own, but this is neither the time nor the place to discuss them. Again, despite having complained so much earlier, I truly believe No One Lives Forever has a strong gameplay that can be enjoyed on its own. even if you don't necessarily vibe with the humor and the campy story. And that's my take on No One Lives Forever. I really recommend you pick up this game, if not for its gameplay, at least for the intriguing plot and stellar writing. Cate is legitimately one of the best video game protagonists ever created, and there are not many titles that offer this stylish, swinging 60s aesthetic.
Head for the roof, they won't expect that.
Before you go, I just wanted to take this occasion to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for your support these past almost 2 years since I opened this channel. I recently hit 1000 subscribers, which is incredible. Last year at this time I was sitting at 200 subs, I think, so seeing that subscriber count enter 4-digit territory was it was great. I'm trying to visualize 1000 people in a room listening to me ranting about video games and name dropping hip hop albums, and it's surreal. So thank you so much for subscribing, liking my videos, leaving comments, and your kind words and everything. Really, I don't deserve this. Alright, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.